My name's Clara, and I'm 32. Picture me in my quiet Oregon living room, the clock ticking past midnight, a crumpled wedding photo in my hand. My husband Nathan just told me he wants a divorce, to run back to his ex. The real gut punch, our closest friends knew. They cheered him on, whispering behind my back, their smiles hiding knives. The betrayal burns a wound I can't stitch shut. How do you trust again when your world crumbles? Where are you watching from? Hit like, subscribe, and share if you've ever felt this kind of hurt. The morning after Nathan's bombshell, I woke up to an empty bed, the sheets cold on his side. My eyes stung raw from crying, but I dragged myself to the kitchen, hoping coffee might steady me. I'm Clara, 32, and I live in this cozy Oregon house that suddenly felt too big. The mug I grabbed was one we'd bought on our honeymoon, its chipped rim a reminder of happier days. I poured the coffee, watching steam curl up, trying to make sense of last night. Nathan wanted a divorce, for Lily, his ex, and our friends knew. I stood there gripping the counter, replaying every moment of our 6 years together. We'd built a life, hadn't we? Mornings like this, we'd sit at this very table planning our future. A summer trip to the coast, maybe a dog. I thought we were solid, but lately, Nathan had been slipping away. He'd stay late at school, claiming stacks of papers to grade. His phone buzzed constantly, and when I'd ask, he'd mutter about parent emails. I believed him. I always did. Yesterday, though, something shifted. We were at a neighborhood BBQ, the kind where kids run wild and burgers sizzle. I was chatting with Hannah, one of our oldest friends from college. She's got this sharp laugh always cutting through the noise. I was telling her about Nathan's late nights, half joking about him being married to his desk. She froze her beer halfway to her lips, then said, "Oh, Clara, you know how it is. People reconnect with old flames sometimes." Her words landed like a pebble in a still pond, rippling through me. I laughed, brushing it off, but her smirk stayed with me, sly and knowing. Now alone in the kitchen, I couldn't shake it. Old flames. Lily. I hadn't thought about her in years, not since Nathan mentioned her once, a high school sweetheart he'd left behind. I set the mug down, my hands shaky, and headed to our bedroom. Maybe I was overreacting, but I needed something, anything, to quiet the doubt. I rummaged through the closet, pulling out a box of keepsakes. Old photos, ticket stubs, and there tucked in an envelope was a letter from Nathan. My heart lifted. He'd written it early in our dating days, words that made me feel seen, loved. I unfolded it, expecting comfort, but the greeting stopped me cold. To someone special. No name. Just that. I read on his handwriting familiar, but the words vague, like they could belong to anyone. My chest tightened. Was this for me? Or her? I shoved the letter back, telling myself it was nothing. People write silly things when they're young, but the seed was planted and it was growing fast. I tried to focus on work, setting up my laptop in the dining room. I'm a graphic designer, mostly freelance, and deadlines don't wait for heartbreak. But my mind wandered. Every ping of my phone felt like a taunt. I checked it hoping for Nathan, but it was just a client email. I scrolled through our texts instead, looking for clues. His messages had gotten shorter, clipped. Be home late. Don't wait up. When had that started? 2 months ago. 3. The front door creaked open and my heart jumped. Nathan was home early. He walked in. Ty loosened his face, tired but guarded. "Hey," he said, avoiding my eyes as he grabbed a water from the fridge. I wanted to scream to demand answers, but my voice came out small. "You're home early. Everything okay?" He shrugged, leaning against the counter. "Just a light day." I took a breath, steadying myself. "Nathan, can we talk about last night? About Lily?" His jaw tightened, and for a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt. Anger. "Clara, you're reading too much into this," he said, his voice sharp. "I'm tired. Can we not do this now?" He turned away, heading upstairs, leaving me standing there, my question unanswered. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. After Nathan brushed me off, I stood frozen in the kitchen, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. My hands trembled as I cleared the counter, wiping crumbs that weren't there. I wanted to follow him upstairs to shake him until he explained, but my feet wouldn't move. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed Rachel, my college friend, who always had a way of cutting through my panic. She picked up on the third ring, her voice bright, like she was mid-laugh. "Clara, what's up?" I paced the dining room, the hardwood creaking under my socks. "Rachel, I need to talk. Nathan's acting weird, and Hannah said something at the BBQ about old flames. I'm freaking out." I waited for her to jump in to tell me I was being silly, but there was a pause too long. When she spoke, her tone was careful, like she was picking her words. "Clara, you're probably overthinking it. Nathan's a good guy. Maybe he's just stressed." Her words felt hollow, like a script. I stopped pacing, clutching the phone tighter. "Rachel, do you know something about Lily?" Another pause, and I could almost hear her weighing her answer. "No, Clara, I don't. Just don't jump to conclusions, okay?" She laughed, but it was forced, and my stomach twisted. Rachel was the one I'd call at 2 a.m. when life got heavy. We'd shared secrets over wine, cried over breakups. If she was hiding something, it meant this was bigger than I thought. I hung up my throat tight and sank into a chair. The dining room was dim, the afternoon light fading through the curtains. I stared at the table where Nathan and I used to host game nights with our friends. Hannah's sharp wit, Rachel's warm hugs, Marcus's dumb jokes, it all felt so safe. But now, every memory seemed tainted, like I'd been blind to something right in front of me. I thought about my mom, how she'd warned me years ago about trusting too easily. "People show you who they are, Clara," she'd said after my dad left. I'd rolled my eyes then, but now her words echoed sharp and accusing. Work was impossible, but I had a deadline looming. I opened my laptop, trying to focus on a logo design, but the colors blurred. My phone buzzed, and I grabbed it, hoping it was Nathan. It was Elise, my coworker, texting about our next project. "You okay?" "Seemed off on our last call," she wrote. I hesitated, then typed back, "Rough day." "Can we grab coffee tomorrow?" She replied instantly. "Anytime." "Spill the tea." I smiled, grateful for her, but the weight in my chest didn't lift. Later that evening, I found myself in the spare room where Nathan kept his old stuff. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed answers. I pulled out his high school yearbook, dust coating my fingers. Flipping through, I found Lily's photo, her smile bright, her name circled in faded ink. My heart sank. Tucked inside was a post-it note, Nathan's handwriting. "Call her soon." It was recent, the ink still bold. My breath caught, and I sat back on the floor, the yearbook heavy in my lap. I thought about confronting him again, but the memory of his sharp tone stopped me. Instead, I texted him, my fingers shaking. "Who's Lily to you now?" I hit send, my pulse racing. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, his reply came. "We need to talk when I get home." No explanation, no reassurance. Just that. I stared at the screen, the words blurring as my eyes burned. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to break everything apart. The air in the house felt thick as I sat on the spare room floor. Nathan's yearbook still open to Lily's circled photo. My phone glowed with his text. "We need to talk when I get home." I wanted to scream, to demand answers now, but I just stared at the post-it note in his handwriting. Call her soon, its edges crisp, mocking me. I'm Clara, 32, and I thought I knew my husband. 6 years of marriage, and now this. My hands shook as I shoved the yearbook back into the box, the thud echoing in the quiet. Nathan came home an hour later, his keys jangling as he stepped inside. I was in the living room, perched on the couch, my knees pulled up like a shield. He didn't look at me, just dropped his bag by the door and headed for the kitchen. Clara, he said, his voice low. Let's get this over with. My heart pounded, but I followed him, the distance between us feeling like miles. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his face unreadable. I've been texting Lily, he admitted, staring at the floor. For a few months. It's not a big deal, but I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact. His words hit like a slap. Not a big deal? I gripped the back of a chair, my knuckles white, texting her how I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He sighed like I was exhausting him. Just catching up. Old memories. You wouldn't understand. I wanted to shake him to make him see how his words were tearing me apart. Nathan, you're hiding this from me. That's not catching up. What's going on? His eyes flicked to mine, then away, and I saw it, guilt raw and undeniable. I don't know, Clara, he snapped. I'm figuring it out. Can you give me space? After 6 years, he wanted space to text his ex. I felt my chest cave, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Before I could respond, his phone rang, and he grabbed it, turning away. I caught a snippet of his hushed voice. Yeah, Marcus, I told her. She's freaking out like I said. My blood ran cold. Marcus, our friend since college, the guy who'd toasted at our wedding. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. What's Marcus got to do with this? Nathan froze, then hung up his jaw tight. Nothing. He's just a friend. But I heard the laughter in his voice on the phone, the casual way he'd said I was clueless. It wasn't nothing. I turned away, my mind racing. Marcus knew. Hannah's smirk at the BBQ, Rachel's dodgy answers, they were all in on it. I thought of my childhood, how my dad's absence left me clinging to people desperate for loyalty. Nathan knew how much trust meant to me, and he'd thrown it away. I went to the bedroom, slamming the door, and sank onto the bed, my hands covering my face. The room smelled like him, his cologne lingering on the pillows, and it made my stomach churn. Later, my sister Julia called, her voice bright through the phone. Clara, you okay? You sound off. I wanted to tell her everything, but shame stopped me. What would she think of me, married to a man who was slipping away? Just tired. I lied, my voice cracking. She pushed like she always did. Come on, spill. Is it Nathan? I swallowed, tears burning. It's fine, Julia. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered to the kitchen, the clock ticking past 2 a.m. Nathan was upstairs, probably texting Lily while I stood in the dark, replaying his words. Figuring it out. What did that even mean? I opened his wallet on the counter, left there carelessly, and froze. Tucked behind his ID was a photo, small and worn. Nathan and Lily smiling at a coffee shop, the date on the back in his handwriting, my birthday 3 months ago. My hands shook as I stared at it, the betrayal sinking deeper like a knife twisting in my chest. I stood in the kitchen, the photo of Nathan and Lily burning in my hand, the date on the back, my birthday mocking every memory of that day. I'm Clara, 32, and the man I married was building a secret life while I blew out candles. I slipped the photo back into his wallet, my fingers numb, and moved to the living room where the silence felt like a weight on my chest. I needed air, but the walls seemed to close in, trapping me with questions I wasn't ready to answer. The next evening, We had a game night planned with our friends Hannah, Rachel, Marcus, and Sarah. I almost canceled, but some stubborn part of me wanted to see their faces to test if they'd flinch. I set out chips and cards, my hands moving on autopilot while Nathan hovered nearby, quieter than usual. When the doorbell rang, my stomach twisted. Hannah walked in first, her laugh too loud, followed by Rachel, who gave me a quick hug that felt like a formality. Marcus clapped Nathan on the back, their ease slicing through me. Sarah, always the quiet one, just smiled and sat down. We played cards, but the room felt wrong, like a stage where everyone knew the script except me. I watched them searching for cracks. Hannah kept glancing at Nathan, her eyes darting away when I caught her. Rachel was overly chatty, filling the silence with stories that didn't land. Marcus joked about old times and Nathan laughed, but it was forced, his hand gripping his beer too tight. I couldn't take it anymore. So I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. Anyone heard from Lily lately? The table went still. Hannah's smile froze, and Rachel's eyes flicked to Marcus, who coughed and reached for a chip. Nathan stared at his cards, his jaw tight. "Who's Lily?" Sarah asked, her voice soft, and I realized she might not know. Hannah jumped in too fast. "Oh, just some old friend of Nathan's. No big deal?" Her laugh was brittle, and I felt my blood boil. "No big deal," I repeated, leaning forward. "Then why's Nathan texting her behind my back?" The air shifted heavy with unspoken truths. Rachel reached for my hand, her voice soothing. "Clara, you're upset. Let's not do this here." I pulled away, my eyes locked on Hannah. "Did you know?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. She blinked, her face paling, then stammered, I didn't want to hurt you, Clara. It's just Tex. Just Tex." The words echoed, each one a betrayal. Marcus cleared his throat, his tone condescending. "Come on, Clara. Don't make a scene." Nathan said nothing, his silence louder than any defense. I stood my chair, scraping the floor, and walked to the window, needing space. Outside, the street was dark, the neighbor's porch light flickering. I thought of the nights we'd all spent here laughing until dawn, planning trips, sharing secrets. They'd been my family, or so I thought. Now their voices behind me felt like static, distant and false. I turned back, my eyes burning. "You all knew," I said, my voice breaking, "and you let me sit here looking like a fool." Rachel stood, her hands out like she could fix this. "Clara, we were trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed, a bitter sound that startled even me. "By lying." By cheering him on, Nathan finally spoke, his voice low. "Clara, stop. This isn't their fault." I spun to face him, my anger spilling over. "Then whose is it? Nathan mine, for trusting you?" He looked away, and in that moment, I saw the truth. He didn't care enough to fight for us. The game night ended early, our friends leaving in a flurry of awkward goodbyes. Hannah whispered, "I'm sorry," as she left, but it felt empty. Alone with Nathan, I waited for him to speak, to explain, but he just grabbed his keys. "I'm meeting Lily tomorrow," he said, his voice flat. "I need to sort this out." He walked out the door, clicking shut, leaving me in a house that felt like a stranger's. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, the weight of their betrayal crushing me with no way out in sight. Morning came too fast, the sunlight slicing through the bedroom blinds like an accusation. "I'm Clara, 32, and I hadn't slept." Nathan's words from last night looping in my head. He was meeting Lily to sort things out. I rolled over the bed, empty his pillow untouched. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every doubt. I dragged myself downstairs, my bare feet cold on the hardwood, and made coffee out of habit, though my stomach churned at the thought of drinking it. I was stirring sugar into my mug when Nathan walked in. His hair mussed his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He didn't look at me, just grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water. The silence between us was suffocating, but I couldn't hold it in anymore, so I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "How was your night? Did you sort things out with Lily?" He froze the glass halfway to his lips, then set it down hard, the clink echoing. "Clara," he said, his voice low. I didn't want it to come to this. My heart stuttered. Come to what? I stepped closer, my hands clenched at my sides. He finally met my eyes. And what I saw there, resignation, not remorse, made my knees weak. "I want a divorce," he said, each word a hammer. "I'm in love with Lily. I always have been. Marrying you was a mistake." The room spun. A mistake. 6 years, our vows, the life we'd built, gone in a sentence. I gripped the counter, my nails digging into the wood. A mistake. I whispered, my voice breaking. "Nathan, we have a home, a life. You're throwing it away for her." He shook his head like I was the one who didn't get it. "I tried, Clara. I tried to make it work, but I can't keep pretending. Lily's my future." I wanted to scream, to throw the coffee mug at him, but my body wouldn't move. Instead, I laughed, a raw, jagged sound that scared me. "Pretending? You've been lying to me for months, Nathan, and our friends Hannah, Rachel, Marcus, they all knew. They watched you betray me and said nothing." His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. That silence was worse than any confession, a confirmation that I'd been alone in this marriage longer than I'd realized. I turned away, my eyes burning, and stumbled to the living room. My wedding album sat on the coffee table, a relic of a life that felt like a lie. I flipped it open, the photos blurring through my tears, us cutting the cake, dancing under string lights, promising forever. I sank to the floor, clutching the album, my sobs shaking me. Nathan followed, standing in the doorway, his voice softer now. "Clara, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." "Sorry," I looked up, my face wet, my voice raw. "You're sorry. You've been planning this, Nathan. You and Lily and our friends, they all chose you over me. How do I come back from that?" He didn't answer, just looked away, and I saw it. Then, he was already gone. I stood the album falling to the floor and pointed at the door. "Get out. Now." He hesitated, then grabbed his keys and left the door slamming behind him. I collapsed onto the couch, my chest heaving, the weight of his words crushing me. A divorce. Lily, a mistake. I thought of calling Julia, but my hands wouldn't move. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed Rachel, my fingers shaking. She answered, her voice cautious. "Clara. You okay? I didn't bother with pleasantries. Did you know Nathan's leaving me for Lily?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "Clara, we all knew. We thought it was better if you didn't." Her words were a fresh wound, tearing open what little hope I had left. "Better," I choked out. "You let me believe we were friends, Rachel. You all did." She started to apologize, but I hung up my phone, slipping from my hand. The room spun again, and I curled into myself, the truth suffocating me. Everyone I trusted had chosen Nathan's happiness over mine, and I was left to pick up the pieces alone. I sat on the couch, the echo of Rachel's words ringing in my ears. They all knew. I'm Clara, 32, and my world was unraveling thread by thread. The living room felt like a cage, the walls lined with memories that now mocked me. I needed to move, to do something, so I grabbed my coat and headed to the corner cafe, the one where Nathan and I used to share pastries on lazy Sundays. Maybe the familiar hum of voices would drown out the chaos in my head. The cafe was crowded, the air thick with coffee and chatter. I ordered a latte, my hands unsteady as I paid, and found a corner table. I was stirring foam into swirls when I heard a whisper from the table nearby. "That's her right. Nathan's wife?" I froze, my spoon clattering against the mug. Two women strangers leaned closer, their voices low but clear. "Yeah, poor thing. Everyone's talking about it. He's been with Lily for months, right under her nose." My face burned, shame flooding me like a tide. I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, but I couldn't move. The women kept talking, oblivious. I heard their friends were in on it, telling him to go for it. "Can you imagine? Your own friends?" The other laughed, a cruel edge to it. "She must feel so stupid. Did you see her at the market last week, all smiley buying groceries for him?" My throat closed, and I gripped the table, my nails digging into the wood. I should have left, but I stayed rooted by some masochistic need to hear it all. They mentioned details, places Nathan and Lily had been spotted at diner, a park, moments I'd spent oblivious planning dinners, folding his laundry. The humiliation was a physical ache, my chest tight, my breath shallow. I thought of our last anniversary, how he'd kissed my forehead, promising forever. Had he been texting her then? Laughing with our friends about my cluelessness? I left the cafe, the cold air hitting my face as I stepped outside. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at it, hoping for an apology. A lifeline. It was an email notification from Nathan's account left logged in on my laptop. My hands shook as I opened it, the subject line blank. It was a forwarded thread between him and Marcus, dated weeks ago. "Clara's too naive," Marcus wrote. "She'll never suspect. Just keep it low-key with Lily." Nathan's reply. "Don't worry, she's wrapped up in her little world. I've got this." I stopped walking, my legs weak, and leaned against a lamppost. The street was quiet, the glow of shop windows blurring through my tears. My friends, my husband, they'd been plotting, mocking me while I loved them. I opened another email, my heart pounding. It was from Hannah, a screenshot of their group chat. "Clara deserves better," she'd written, "but she's too weak to leave him." The others had liked the message, their names, a roll call of betrayal, Rachel, Marcus, even Sarah, who'd stayed quiet. Rage surged hot and blinding, but it was swallowed by despair. I stumbled home, the key scraping in the lock as I let myself in. The house was dark, Nathan still gone, and I didn't turn on the lights. I sank to the floor in the hallway, my coat still on my phone, clutched to my chest. The emails, the whispers at the cafe. Hannah's words, they swirled a storm I couldn't escape. I was exposed, humiliated, abandoned by everyone I'd trusted, and the worst part was, I didn't know how to fight back. I just sat there, broken, the pieces of my life scattered around me, with no strength left to pick them up. The hallway floor was cold beneath me, my coat damp from the night air, the glow of my phone screen fading as I stared at nothing. I'm Clara, 32, and I'd hit bottom, the sting of Nathan's betrayal, and our friends' lies still raw. The emails, the cafe whispers, Hannah's cruel words, they'd stripped me bare, left me feeling small, foolish. But as I sat there, something shifted, a flicker of heat in my chest. I wasn't this weak person they'd painted. I was done being their punchline. I stood, my legs shaky, and moved to the kitchen, flipping on the light. The brightness stung, but it woke me up. I grabbed a notebook from the drawer, one I used for sketching designs, and started writing. Names: Hannah, Rachel, Marcus, Nathan. I'd confront them one by one, not with tears, but with the truth they'd tried to bury. My hand trembled, but each word felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. First, Hannah. She'd been the loudest, her smirk at the BBQ a blade I hadn't dodged. I texted her, my fingers steady now. Can you come over tomorrow? I need to talk. She replied fast. Sure. Clara, you okay? Her concern felt fake, but I didn't care. I'd use it. I spent the morning cleaning the house, not for her, but for me, scrubbing counters like I could erase the mess of my life. By noon, the place smelled of lemon, and I felt sharper ready. Hannah arrived, her hair pulled back, her smile cautious. We sat at the dining table, the same one where we'd played cards, where she'd lied to my face. I poured her tea, my hands calm, and slid my phone across the table, the group chat screenshot open. Her words stared back Clara's, too weak to leave him. Her eyes widened, her cup clinking against the saucer. Clara, where did you get this? Does it matter? I said, my voice low but firm. You wrote it. You all did. You knew about Nathan and Lily, and you laughed at me. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Don't. I trusted you, Hannah. We were friends for years, and you chose him over me. Why? Her face crumpled, tears welling, but I didn't soften. I was jealous, she admitted, her voice small. You had this perfect life, Clara. Nathan, the house, your career. I didn't mean it. Jealous. The word landed heavy, but it didn't excuse her. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. You could have talked to me. Instead, you stabbed me in the back. She sobbed, apologizing, but I felt nothing. I stood, signaling the end. I need you to leave, Hannah. We're done. She gathered her things, her shoulders shaking, and walked out the door, clicking shut behind her. I exhaled, my heart racing, but steady. It wasn't enough, not yet. I grabbed my laptop and opened social media, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed a post, vague but pointed. Some friends show their true colors when you're down. Grateful for the ones who don't. I tagged Hannah, knowing our mutual acquaintances would see it, would ask questions. I hit post, my pulse loud in my ears. Within minutes, likes and comments poured in, people I hadn't spoken to in years, reaching out, shocked, curious. I closed the laptop, my breath catching. This was just the start. I thought of my mom, how she'd rebuilt after my dad left, how she'd told me strength wasn't loud, it was steady. I wasn't weak, and I'd prove it. I opened the notebook again, circling Rachel's name next. She'd begged for forgiveness over the phone, but words weren't enough. I'd face her then, Marcus, then Nathan, each one a step toward taking back my life. The fire in me grew, not wild, but focused, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The buzz of my social media post still hummed in the background, but I set my phone aside, the notebook open to Rachel's name. I'm Clara, 32, and I was done letting their lies define me. Confronting Hannah had lit something inside, a quiet strength I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't yelling or breaking things. I was moving forward, deliberate, like laying bricks for a new foundation. Rachel was next, and I needed to be ready. I called her, my voice even. Can we meet at the park tomorrow? Just us? She hesitated, then agreed, her tone wary. The park was neutral ground, a place where we'd once walked arm in arm, sharing dreams. Now it'd be where I'd draw a line. That night, I sifted through more emails on Nathan's account, my stomach twisting at each one. I found a message from Rachel to Nathan dated a month ago, Clara's asking questions. Be careful. My jaw clenched. She'd been covering for him, not me. Morning came crisp and gray, the park's paths lined with fallen leaves. Rachel was already there, sitting on a bench, her scarf wrapped tight. She stood when she saw me, her smile nervous. Clara, I'm so glad you called. I didn't smile back, just sat, my hands in my pockets. I read your email to Nathan, I said, watching her face. You told him to be careful. You were protecting him, not me. Her eyes widened, her mouth opening, but I held up a hand. Don't lie, Rachel. I'm tired of it. She sank back, her hands twisting in her lap. I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her voice small. Nathan said he was unhappy, and Lily, she made him light up. I thought you'd be okay, Clara. You're so strong. Strong. The word stung, a twisted compliment. You don't get to decide what I can handle, I said, my voice low but cutting. You were my friend, Rachel. I told you everything, and you chose him. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't waver. We're done, I said, standing. Don't call me. Walking away, my chest felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight. But Marcus was next, and he wouldn't be so easy. I drove to his office, a small accounting firm downtown, my resolve hardening with each mile. He was in a meeting, but I waited in the lobby, flipping through a magazine I didn't read. When he emerged, his tie loosened, he froze at the sight of me. Clara, what's this about? I stood, my voice calm. Outside. Now. We stepped into the parking lot, the air sharp with coming rain. I pulled out my phone, showing him the email he'd sent Nathan, the one calling me naive. His face reddened, but he laughed, a dismissive sound. Come on, Clara, it was a joke. You're blowing this out of proportion. My eyes narrowed. A joke? You helped Nathan cheat Marcus. You mocked me while I trusted you. He shrugged, stepping back. That's on you for not seeing it. Rage flared, but I kept my voice steady. You're not my friend anymore. Stay out of my life. I turned away, my heart pounding, but I felt taller, like I was reclaiming ground. Back home, I sat at my desk, thinking of Nathan. He was last, but I needed leverage. I remembered his late nights at school, the ones he'd brushed off as grating. I opened my laptop and drafted an anonymous email to his principal, hinting at inappropriate conduct during work hours. It wasn't a lie. I'd seen texts proving he'd met Lily on school time. I hit send, my breath catching. It was a risk, but I was past playing nice. As evening fell, I walked to the closet, pulling out Nathan's favorite jacket, the one he wore on our first date. I held it, the fabric soft under my fingers, then carried it to the donation bin down the street. I kept one button, slipping it into my pocket, a small reminder of who I was becoming. Standing there, the sky bruising with clouds, I felt it, a quiet power, not loud, but unbreakable, rising in me like a tide. The button from Nathan's jacket sat in my pocket, a small weight I carried as I moved through the next morning. I'm Clara, 32, and I'd started a fight I wasn't sure I could finish, but I wasn't backing down. The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that follows a storm. And I stood at the kitchen window watching rain streak the glass. My laptop pinged a notification from the social media post I'd made about Hannah. Comments had multiplied overnight, old classmates and neighbors weighing in their shock palpable even through a screen. How could she do that to you? One wrote. Another, you deserve better, Clara. I read them, my chest tight, not with pride, but with a strange, heavy validation. By noon, the fallout began. A mutual friend texted saying Hannah had been let go from her marketing job. Word of my post had reached her boss, who didn't take kindly to her unprofessional conduct. I didn't feel joy, just a cold satisfaction like crossing off a task. Hannah's tears at my table hadn't moved me, and her loss didn't either. I'd shown the world her mask, and it was hers to carry now. My phone buzzed again, this time Nathan. His text was a wall of anger. What the hell? Clara, you're trying to ruin me. The school's investigating me because of your email. I stared at the words, my pulse steady. He'd expected me to stay quiet, to let him walk away unscathed. I didn't reply, just set the phone down and poured coffee the mug, warming my hands. The investigation wasn't my fault. It was his for blurring lines between work and Lily. I'd only pointed a light at the truth. I was rinsing the mug when Julia called, her voice sharp through the speaker. "Clara, what's going on? I saw your post, and now Mom's freaking out about you airing dirty laundry online." I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes. "I'm not airing anything," I said, my tone even. "I'm just done hiding their lies." She sighed, her worry palpable. "I get it, but this could backfire. What if Nathan sues or something?" I hadn't thought of that, and the possibility prickled my skin, but I pushed it down. "He won't," I said, more to myself than her. "He's got too much to lose." Julia softened, her voice dropping. "I'm proud of you, you know. But be careful." I nodded, though she couldn't see, and hung up the weight of her words lingering. Careful. I'd been careful my whole life, trusting, forgiving, smoothing things over. Look where it got me. I glanced at the notebook on the table, Marcus and Rachel's names crossed out, Nathan's still waiting. The fire I'd felt yesterday was still there, but it was tempered now, a slow burn. Later, I walked to the mailbox, needing air. The street was slick with rain, the neighborhood hushed. Mrs. Diane, my neighbor, waved from her porch, her silver hair catching the light. She'd seen me at my lowest, crying under her oak tree weeks ago. "Clara, you holding up?" she called. I nodded, forcing a smile, but she beckoned me over. We sat on her porch swing, the creak of it steadying me. "Heard about Nathan?" she said, her eyes kind but sharp. "You did right calling it out. Men like that bank on silence." Her words landed soft like a hand on my shoulder, and I felt seen, not judged. Back home, my phone lit up with a voicemail, the number unfamiliar. I played it, my breath catching. It was Lily, her voice tight, accusing. "Clara, you're destroying Nathan's life. He's a good man, and you're making this harder than it needs to be." She paused, her voice cracking. "Just let him go." I replayed it, her words a mix of venom and doubt. She thought I was the villain, but that crack in her voice told me she wasn't sure. I saved the message, my fingers steady, and sat in the quiet, the rain outside slowing to a drip, my resolve hardening like stone. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and heavy as I sat at the kitchen table, Lily's voicemail still echoing in my mind. "I'm Clara, 32, and I'd stirred a storm by calling out Nathan and our friends. Now the ripples were spreading, and I wasn't sure what they'd carry back. I tucked my phone away, the silence of the house wrapping around me, and glanced out the window. The neighborhood was stirring, cars pulling into driveways, lights flickering on. Life went on, but mine felt paused, caught in the aftermath of my choices. By evening, word had spread further. A neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, stopped by with a casserole, her eyes soft with pity. "I heard about Nathan," she said, setting the dish on the counter. "You're better off without him." Her kindness was genuine, but it stung, a reminder that my pain was now public. I thanked her, my voice tight, and closed the door, the casserole untouched. The community was turning, siding with me, their whispers no longer cruel, but sympathetic. It should have felt good, but it didn't. It felt like being on display, my wounds open for all to see. I checked my phone, expecting more messages, and found one from Sarah, the quiet one from our friend group. "Clara, I'm sorry," it read. "I didn't know how to stand up to Hannah. I should have told you about Nathan. Can we talk?" I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Sarah had stayed silent at game night, her eyes down, but she'd been there complicit. I typed, "Meet me tomorrow," and hit send, unsure if I wanted her apology or just her accountability. The next morning, I met Sarah at a small bakery, the smell of fresh bread thick in the air. She sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug, her face pale. I was scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hannah pressured us to keep quiet. said it was for Nathan's happiness. I didn't agree, but I didn't fight it. Her eyes met mine, pleading, but I kept mine steady. You could have warned me, I said, my voice low. One text, Sarah. That's all it would have taken. She nodded, tears spilling, and I felt a pang, not forgiveness, but recognition of her weakness. Walking home, I passed the community board where flyers for book clubs and yard sales fluttered. A few neighbors glanced my way, their nods cautious, like they weren't sure how to approach me now. I kept moving my hands in my pockets, the button from Nathan's jacket still there, a talisman of my resolve. But the weight of their eyes lingered a reminder that I wasn't just Clara anymore. I was the woman Nathan betrayed, the one who fought back. Back home, Elise called, her voice bright through the phone. Clara, you're a legend. People are talking about how you stood up to them. I forced a laugh, but it felt hollow. It doesn't feel like winning, I said, sinking onto the couch. She paused, then said, It's not about winning. It's about not letting them walk over you. Her words settled in solid, and I thanked her, hanging up as dusk fell. I lit a candle, its flicker casting shadows on the walls, and opened a box of old letters, ones I'd written to myself in college, full of dreams. I read one, my younger voice, promising to never let anyone dim my light. I'd forgotten that girl, but she was still in me, bruised, but alive. I folded the letter, my eyes dry, and sat in the quiet, the candle's glow steady. The fight had cost me, left me raw, and as I stared into the flame, I felt it, a quiet ache, not for Nathan, but for the Clara I'd been trusting, and whole now scattered in pieces I wasn't sure I could reclaim. A soft breeze slipped through the open window, stirring the curtains, as I sat on the living room floor, a cup of chamomile tea cooling in my hands. I'm Clara, 32, and for the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. The storm I'd kicked up calling out Nathan, Hannah, Rachel, and Marcus had settled, leaving a quiet I wasn't used to. I'd arranged to meet Nathan today, not to fight, but to close a door. The divorce papers sat on the coffee table, signed, their edges crisp against the wood. I'd chosen the park for our meeting, a place where kids laughed and trees whispered neutral enough to keep me steady. I arrived early, the grass damp under my sneakers, and found a bench near the playground. Nathan showed up 10 minutes later, his face drawn, his usual confidence gone. He looked like he hadn't slept, his shirt untucked, his eyes avoiding mine. Clara, he said, sitting at the bench's far end. Thanks for meeting me. I nodded, my hands folded in my lap, the tea's warmth still lingering in my palms. I'm not here to argue, I said, my voice calm, almost foreign to me. I just need to say my piece. He shifted his fingers, tapping his knee, but he didn't interrupt. I took a breath, the air sharp with autumn. You broke me, Nathan, not just with Lily, but with how you let our friends turn on me. I built my life around you, and you let it crumble. He looked down, his jaw tight, and for a moment, I thought he'd argue. Instead, he whispered, I know. I messed up, Clara. I thought Lily was what I wanted, but I was wrong. His voice cracked, and I saw it, regret raw and heavy. But it didn't soften me. I'd spent months drowning in his choices. His pain wasn't mine to carry. I don't need your sorry, I said, my eyes steady. I needed your honesty. You didn't give me that. I slid the divorce papers toward him, their weight a quiet finality. Sign them, I said. He hesitated, his hand hovering, then took the pen I offered and scrawled his name. The scratch of ink felt like a knot loosening in my chest. I stood, tucking the papers under my arm, and looked at him one last time. I hope you find what you're looking for, Nathan, but it's not my job to help you. I walked away, the playground's laughter fading behind me, my steps light but sure. Back home, I set the papers in a drawer out of sight and poured fresh tea. My phone buzzed, Julia checking in. "You okay after seeing him?" she asked, her voice warm. I smiled, leaning against the counter. "Better than I thought." "It's done." She laughed, a sound that felt like home. "That's my sister. Mom's coming over tomorrow, by the way. She's got stories to share." I chuckled, promising to call later, and hung up the quiet settling again. I wandered to the backyard, the grass still wet from morning dew. A sparrow hopped along the fence, its smallness a reminder of how life kept moving, even after everything. I thought of my early 20s when I'd dreamed of a life bigger than this town before Nathan, before the hurt. That girl was still in me, bruised, but waking up. I sat on the porch steps, the tea's steam curling upward, and let the moment hold me soft and still, like the world was finally letting me breathe. The afternoon sun dipped low, painting the backyard in gold. As I sat on the porch steps, my tea now cold. I'm Clara, 32, and the weight of Nathan's signature on those divorce papers felt like a chapter closing, not with a slam, but a soft click. I leaned back, the wood creaking under me, and let my eyes trace the sky where clouds drifted slow, unhurried. For months, I'd been running through anger, betrayal, revenge, but now I was still, and it didn't scare me. I stood brushing grass from my jeans and walked inside to my office, a small room lined with sketchbooks and paint. I'd neglected it lately, my designs piling up, but today felt different. I opened a drawer, pulling out a blank canvas, and set it on the easel. My brushes were dusty, but I didn't care. I mixed colors, blues, golds, a hint of red, and started painting, not planning, just moving. The strokes were messy, free, a swirl of light and shadow that felt like me, raw but whole. As I painted, I thought of my mom, how she'd rebuilt after my dad left. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet choices, planting a garden, reading late into the night. I used to think strength was loud, a fight you won. Now I saw it in her steady hands, in the way she smiled despite the scars. I wanted that, not to erase the pain, but to carry it lighter. The canvas took shape, a horizon line, a figure standing small but upright, facing the sun. Later, Mrs. Diane knocked, her voice calling through the screen door. I invited her in, and she carried a flyer for her book club, her eyes bright. "We're reading about second chances," she said, setting it on the counter. "Thought you might like it." I smiled, genuine this time, and promised to join. We sat at the table, sharing tea, her stories of loss, and laughter weaving through the air. She didn't ask about Nathan, just listened as I talked about my painting, my voice soft but sure. After she left, I walked to the mailbox. The street hushed, the air cool against my skin. A letter waited inside its envelope, plain, the handwriting unfamiliar. I opened it, my breath catching Lily. "Clara," it read. "I was wrong about you. Nathan lied to me too. I'm sorry for my part in this." Her words were simple, no excuses, and I felt no rush to reply, not yet. Back inside, I stood in the hallway, the house settling around me. I thought of the girl I'd been trusting, eager, building a life with Nathan. She wasn't gone, just older, wiser, her edges softened by time. I walked to the mirror, meeting my own eyes, and saw someone new, not unbroken, but not shattered either. I turned off the lights, the quiet wrapping me like a blanket, and for the first time, I didn't need to fill it. I just let it be steady enough. Morning light filtered through the kitchen window, catching the steam rising from my coffee. I'm Clara, 32, and the house felt different now, not empty, but open, like it was waiting for me to fill it. The divorce was final, the papers filed, and I'd kept this place, its creaky floors and familiar corners, mine alone. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me, and looked out at the backyard, where a new day was waking up, quiet and unhurried. I'd started small routines, anchors in the chaos of the past months. Each morning, I'd walk to the corner market, picking up fresh bread, or a bundle of herbs, chatting with the cashier who knew my name. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a rhythm I was building. I'd signed up for a pottery class at the community center, my hands learning the clay's weight, its give. The first bowl I made was lopsided, but I kept it on the shelf, a reminder that imperfect things could still hold beauty. Work was steady now, my freelance design business picking up. I'd spent late nights redesigning my portfolio, pouring myself into logos and layouts, each one a step towards something new. A client had called yesterday praising a project I'd doubted, and I'd smiled not just for the job, but for the flicker of pride I hadn't felt in years. I was good at this, and I was enough, not because someone else said so, but because I was proving it to myself. Julia came over often, her laughter filling the house. We'd cook together simple meals like pasta or soup, the kind of food that warmed you from the inside. Last week, she'd brought Mom, and we'd sat on the couch sharing stories of her old jobs, her quiet victories. Mom's eyes had softened when she looked at me. No words needed, just a nod that said she saw me standing taller. I'd hugged her longer than usual, feeling the strength we both carried passed down like a keepsake. I'd started writing again, not letters or designs, but a journal, pages of thoughts I hadn't let myself voice. Some nights I'd sit by the window pen, moving, letting the hurt spill out, not to dwell, but to release. I wrote about the woman I'd been, the one who trusted too easily, and the one I was becoming, scarred but steady. The words weren't perfect, but they were honest, and that was enough. Today, I walked to the backyard, the grass cool under my feet. I'd bought a small bench, nothing fancy, just wood and nails, and set it under the oak tree. I sat there now, coffee in hand, watching a squirrel dart across the lawn. The world felt softer, not because the pain was gone, but because I'd learned its shape, how to carry it without breaking. I thought of Lily's letter still unanswered, and felt no rush to reply. She was healing too in her own way, and I wished her well, not out of duty, but because I could. I leaned back, the bench solid beneath me, and closed my eyes. The breeze carried the scent of earth, fresh and alive, and I let it hold me. The past was there, a shadow, but it didn't own me anymore. I was here in this moment, building something new, and for the first time, that felt like enough. The evening settled soft around the house, the kind of quiet that feels like a friend. I'm Clara, 32, and I was learning to live in this new skin, one stitched together from the pieces Nathan and our friends had scattered. I stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a stew, the knife's rhythm steady grounding. The act was simple, but it felt like a promise to feed myself, to care for the life I was building, one small choice at a time. I'd joined Mrs. Diane's book club, and last night we'd gathered in her living room, a circle of women with stories etched in their laughter and silences. We read about a woman who'd lost everything, but found herself in the rebuilding. As we talked, I shared a piece of my journey, my voice steady, no longer hiding. Their nods, their gentle questions wrapped around me like a quilt. I wasn't alone, not anymore, and that realization settled deep, a root taking hold. I thought about forgiveness, not the kind that erases, but the kind that frees you. I didn't hate Nathan, or Hannah, or Rachel, not anymore. They'd hurt me, yes, but holding that anger was like carrying stones in my pockets. I'd let them go, not for them, but for me to walk lighter. Lily's letter still sat in a drawer, and I'd written back last week a short note wishing her peace. It wasn't about fixing things. It was about closing a loop, leaving no jagged edges to cut me again. I'd started running 2 early mornings when the town was still asleep. The trail by the river stretched wide, its path worn but steady. Each step was a conversation with myself, a way to hear my own voice again. I wasn't running from anything, not anymore, but towards something, myself maybe, or the woman I was still becoming. The ache in my legs, the burn in my lungs reminded me I was alive, capable here. Tonight, I sat at the table, the stew simmering, its warmth filling the air. I thought about trust, how it's not a gift you give blindly, but a choice you make careful and clear. I'd trusted Nathan too easily, built my world on his promises. But I'd learned something sharper: trust starts with yourself. I trusted my hands to shape clay, my heart to heal my feet, to carry me forward. That was enough to start again. I looked around the kitchen, the walls bare now, ready for new stories. I wasn't whole, not yet, but I was growing like a tree after a storm, its branches bent, but reaching for light. The lesson wasn't loud, but it was mine. You don't need everyone to love you, just the ones who see you clearly. And above all, you need to see yourself, flaws and all, and choose to keep going. What's a moment that made you choose yourself, that taught you to stand taller? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, to know we're walking this path together. If this resonated, give it a like, subscribe to join me for more, and share it with someone who needs a little light. Thank you for being here, for listening. Here's to healing, to new beginnings, and to you finding your way.